Good evening. This is day 104 of making little videos about describe a day or thought in the life of schizophrenic. Uh, my name is Dominic, and I have been diagnosed with schizoid affective disorder. I don't believe I am diseased or crazy, but I believe I experience a reality that is the schizophrenic reality. In day 17 of these videos, I describe why I call myself schizophrenic rather than targeted individual. In day 45, it's a little 3-minute intro, and then that gives you some insight into why I make these videos. And I give little statements, little thoughts. I share a day and thought in the life of me as a schizophrenic to give some sort of insight into some synchronicity and feedback, like gang stalking or voices, and uh, potential reasons why I may have been targeted, give insight into my thought processes, and then just to share thoughts, I guess, as a schizophrenic, and to explain that share some amount of sanity amidst the world going crazy and saying I was insane. All right, so I was gonna start off with like the talking about Trump, and maybe the whole point of Trump is to get us to talk about him rather than the fact that there's starving children or starving people in Palestine. Like maybe Trump for the past 15 years has been an op, and it's actually, I think I talk about this in my book. Uh, Maybe Trump is the whole point of Trump is to distract from the totality of the empire's operations around the world, or to have some sort of narrative management. It's almost like a total blackout of other events in the world. And I was just thinking, like, I don't see the starving kids on TV about Palestine. I don't ever see that happen. The only time I get it is really on Substack. And yeah, so maybe that's the whole point of Trump, is to keep us from seeing that. And I saw a picture of a starving kid today, and I had to lay down for a little bit, and it's like it's a lot to take in, and uh, I don't know what to do about it, because as I've said in previous videos, if you go to a protest and you're saying free Palestine and everything, uh, potentiality, you're like Don King setting somebody that's not ready to win a war against Mike Tyson in his prime, which is basically Israel and the American Empire or whatever. Now, I know maybe the American Empire is not really in its prime, but militarily, it kind of sort of has crazy amount of weapons and capabilities and stuff. Anyway, so uh, yeah, I don't know what to do about that. It makes you kind of feel helpless. But then I was thinking, like, today, like, Trump maybe put the whole point of him so that we don't digest that and call maybe take democratic action against I guess the Israeli lobby, or I don't know, against the politicians in America that support the genocide that happens there. So and then it's crazy, and I talk in my book about, like, how one event will come up and replace another event. So there will be terror actions and stuff to replace another event, which replaces another event. And then potentially there's just things are like chessboard maneuverings for potentiality to try to create world wars, or I talked in the previous videos about shock doctrine with David A. Hughes, and how the potentiality is, like, they do these shocking things to create these traumas so the population is malleable, and everyone gets on board for civil liberties dissolution, or people get on board for uh, financial, like maybe Bitcoin or something, like, hey, everyone's going to go to Bitcoin, or like financial changes and stuff. So that's also something, but I don't know. I was just thinking, though, just to reiterate that Trump potentially is doing all this crazy shit in America for the purposes of taking our eyes off of a crazy warring operation in the Middle East as they remake the Middle East. And, you see countries like Dubai come up, or you see cities or uh, United Arab Emirates in becoming really wealthy. And in the meantime, there's like, you wonder what's going on with like all this like crazy weird funding of each other in the Middle East, and then they have these wars, and you don't know if they're just sacrificing people for other agendas or whatever, and like they're just using you know proxy warfare for other kinds of agendas. Like potentiality is like you know I don't know. I speculate in my book like maybe they wanted a dual pronged genocide in Israel and Palestine, but I don't really know. But anyways, so that was my thought today about Trump and potentiality of taking our eye off of starving children in Palestine and Yemen or places like that. And so that was my thought today. I started this book called Unacknowledged by Dr. Steven Greer today, and he starts off the book talking about he's not a doc, he's a medical doctor, but he's into the UFOs and stuff. And he's on Gaia and stations like that, and yeah, he's been around for a long time. And it's all the unacknowledged things, so I'm actually talking about it with I don't know. uh anyways, I just started that book. It was a pretty expensive book. It was like $80, but I had a gift card for our Christmas for our Amazon, so I bought it on Amazon. And yeah, so uh he talks in there about Majestic 12, which is if people don't know what Majestic 12 is, it's allegedly the 12-man council or something that was able to retrieve UFO wreckage and reverse engineer it and then take off planetary travel to new heights or whatever. But uh, they did all this reverse engineering of ET technology supposedly, and they're supposedly uh, off world and breakaway civilization and everything, but supposedly it's run by this group called the Majestic 12, and I don't know if like now that they're probably passed away, like if there's like a new 12 that comes in and takes their place or whatever. I'm not really up on the information about that, but yeah. So that's what Majestic 12 is, and supposedly they run a shadow government, and then it makes you wonder if like, potentiality as events to take other events out of the news is they I talked about in my book about how like the Iraq war maybe took people's eye off of what happened in the Congo in Africa because it was slipping out of the narrative. Control was coming out that like uh America was involved in starting the war which caused millions of deaths. And uh there were special operation forces involved in invasions of the Congo and stuff like that, and Rwanda. And so supposedly, uh, I was well, supposedly UFOs are out in space traveling to and from Earth, and there's this Majestic 12 that has an ability to run a shadow government. And you know, I speculated that Congo was blunted out of consciousness when they presented with the new shocking, which was 9/11 and the war on terror and Afghanistan, Iraq, and it was bloody and it was crazy and everything like that. And then when they wanted to blunt that out of when they want to blunt that out of consciousness, they just blunt that out of consciousness with some other sex scandal or some crazy thing like that or whatever. And so, like today I was watching on the news and it was like the Diddy scandal or something, and it was like, uh, they just use it like they don't want to talk about habeas corpus suspension or something, so they talked about Diddy sex scandal, or they don't want to talk about starving children in they just use sensational stories, and they use it, and then they have a narrative about it, and then when the narrative slips, then they just use one other story or whatever, and so yeah. Okay, so I was going to talk about something else here, which is that one, just for instance, the kidnapping and human trafficking of Abrego Garcia to the prison in El Salvador. And there was a senator named Senator Van Hollen from Maryland who went down to El Salvador to try to get Abrego Garcia out of prison. And he received a lot of criticism for that. He's or not a lot, but he received some criticism for that from places such as the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and he's received criticism from strategists that go on TV, like Chris Cuomo show. I saw this guy the other night, and he was criticizing in particular, he was criticizing Van Hollen because he's a white guy, and he's he should be talking. He was saying he should be talking about working class issues and stuff, and we're letting the Republicans own us on working class issues. And I was just thinking to myself, Newsom and this guy for just in particular, but like anybody that was criticizing Van Hollen for going to El Salvador, uh, should they deserve to go down to El Salvador in prison and be deported or human trafficked there, and nobody come and try to get them out, because it's like if you're gonna and I don't wish that on anybody, so I hate to say that, but I'm being very vitriolic here for a second, because uh, it's like to criticize a senator for actually taking action on something. Uh, you know, it it reminds me of like the man in the arena or whatever, like criticizing people for taking action. And in this case, it's a peaceful action. He's being diplomatic. He's going to a prison as a senator, as a law official, and it's like he's not harming anybody by doing it. So it's like the notion is that like I think Gavin Newsom said it was a bad optics or something, or and it was like it's just like it's pathetic to really criticize them, and frankly, it probably exposes some politicians that they didn't do it, and so they're all maneuvering for 2028, and so they were criticizing Van Hollen. I've actually liked Van Hollen for like 20 years. I remember when during the Iraq War he spoke out against it, and he spoke out in a way that was very effective, I think, and substantive. Okay, so AI usage in Boston Knicks. All right, I was gonna talk about AI for a second and the potentiality that it is used to control sporting events. And I've talked before about how, as a schizophrenic, what you do in your house controls sporting events and stuff. And I haven't really been watching the playoffs because it's really annoying. Like I'll eat a piece of cheese and then all of a sudden the game is out of whack or whatever. And it's like, uh, I think that potentiality is that the AI is involved. Like, how does a Boston team shoot 25% from three for 2 games at their home floor, and then they go to New York in that hostile crowd and they're shooting 65%? It's really nuts, and it's a big jump, and it's a matter of days, and it makes me think that like potentiality of the AI is in usage in that situation, because it's like it's kind of crazy. It's so I just think like AI is potentially, and maybe it's the Chinese, or maybe it's some supranational fascist organization, or maybe it's some black ops American organization or something using AI to control sporting events. And yeah, so and I was going to talk about the Stephen King joke for a second, but I don't think I have time for it. And I was going to talk about something called about the irreverence for the Constitution while trying to bring up the idea of new constitutions and stuff, and so it's one is negates the effectiveness of the other or whatever. But I'll talk about that in my next little video. So thank you for listening to me today. I'm at a well, I'll talk about that another time. All right, thank you so much. Goodbye.